Well, folks, here we again for the weekly forecast. Of course, the hot weather we talked about last week did pretty much come to fruition, although we did get a little bit of a cool down during the middle part of the week, particularly on Wednesday, as the cold front kind of slipped a little bit farther south than was originally forecasted in the models last week. But overall, we are fairly well above normal across a good portion of the state. There was a significant lack of precipitation for most areas. We did see a little bit of a complex moving from northwestern Nebraska all the way through southwest Nebraska during the Wednesday time frame. And we did see some isolated thunderstorm activity that dumped over an inch of precipitation. Unfortunately, it came with hail. And then, of course, as we've seen the warm front moving across the state during the Thursday-Friday time frame, we did touch off some scattered convection. But overall, the trend over the last month has been excessively dry for a good portion of the state. We're looking at broad-based areas of eastern Nebraska and portions of western Nebraska where we've received less than 25% of normal precipitation. So in the absence of significant moisture this weekend, we would expect that there will be a significant upgrade to the drought monitor, as it'll go through next Tuesday morning, but it'll be released next Thursday. I would suspect that we'll see a good area of eastern Nebraska and portions of western Nebraska that will be upgraded to abnormally dry conditions. And I think our saving grace at this point in time has been that we haven't been excessively hot. And if the trend continues with cooler temperatures this week, the real question of how this crop's going to fare will come in about 10 days as the heat starts to show signs of returning. So we're going to need to see some of that monsoon moisture start to evect into western Nebraska and translate into eastern Nebraska for us to save the potential for some significant crop decline. So let's take a look at the upper air models and see whether or not those rain chances are in the forecast. I think I'll draw your attention to is the big area of high pressure that was responsible for bringing all the warmth to our region is being pushed farther to the south as we have an upper air low trailing across the Canadian border. And as it moves toward the Great Lakes, it's going to once again dig down southward and start to bring in some of the cooler than normal conditions. And that will happen as we go through this weekend. So the cold front will be moving southward as we progress through the day, giving us a chance for scattered thunderstorm activity across the northern part of the state. Not widespread, but at least there is a chance for moisture. Now as we go into tomorrow, this is going to push that front southward to us, so we could see some convection still in the morning hours tomorrow. But then that will all shift southward into Kansas and we'll be left with basically a much cooler conditions. We're going to drop our temperatures a good 10 degrees across the state, and even cooler conditions are on store as we get into Monday as we start to see this trough deepening to our east, and that's going to bring that flow in the upper area of the atmosphere from the northwest and bringing that cooler conditions in. So we're going to go right back to those fall-like conditions across the eastern half of the state. Unfortunately, for the western half of the state, we'll be looking at closer to normal conditions for an additional day as we're closer to this ridge of high pressure. But more importantly, we're going to start to see some moisture moving up into the central Rockies on the backside of this high pressure system, which was considered to be our monsoonal flow. And that should intersect with this front and have the possibility of generating some thunderstorm activity across the western part of the state. Some of this might get into the Panhandle on Tuesday, but a much better chance will be on Wednesday as the trough has digged itself out to our east and buttoned up against that moisture. We should see some scattered thunderstorm activity, and some of that will start to make its way into central Nebraska, particularly as we get into Thursday. So by Thursday, you start to see that this trough is relaxing, and some of that moisture will make it into central Nebraska with a possibility that some of it may actually make it into extreme eastern Nebraska, but it's probably going to be very isolated. Now, as we go into Friday, we'll see that this trough is gradually weakening. The monsoon moisture is going to pick up and start pushing into the western part of the state, so we're going to continue to carry chances for scattered thunderstorm activity all the way through next weekend. Now, as we go into the temperature forecast, we'll be looking at the warmest temperatures weekend, and then we'll be cooling down as we go into the midweek period before we start to warm up toward the end of the week. The thunderstorm activity is there, but it's very isolated in nature. 8 to 14-day forecast shows the cool air pushing down toward the south. Notice the warmth starting to come in. In terms of moisture, we should show below normal precipitation, but we're also showing with the models that increasing monsoonal flow will start to make its way in as we get late into next weekend.